When you feed your dog, how many times a day you feed your dog can change everything from reducing inflammation, improving a dog's behavior, and even stopping those annoying and obviously uncomfortable hunger pukes. This is something that I have learned through trial and error with my dogs as well as all of the rescue dogs that I have fostered. I have a ton of experience with feeding dogs. So in this video, I'm going to share a new way of thinking when it comes to your dog's feeding schedule. And be sure to stay until the end, because after I share with you when I feed my dog and why it's so important, I'm going to share with you some bonus tips specifically around proper hydration and more. So let's jump into this video. Right? Meow. Short answer, I am a big advocate of feeding your dog one time a day and changing up the time at which you feed every single day. But wait, hear me out, because there are 3 caveats, and I'm gonna go into great detail on all of these, so just make sure you stay tuned. But the 3 caveats are the dog's age, the dog's medical and health specific needs, if any, and third, last but not least, is your schedule, because yes, boo, yes, you matter when it comes to the timing and the frequency at which you feed your dog. Let's just jump into the damn thing. I'm gonna start off with adult dogs and then I'll jump into puppies. But of course, I wanna caveat everything with partner with your holistic and or integrative veterinarian if you have any medical or health concerns. These are just the ways that I feed my dogs and my foster dogs. And the reason I do it again is because I have found it hugely and massively beneficial to both their body's internal health as well as their mental health. Do you have a dog that just before mealtime they start pacing around you like a shark, nudging you with their cold nose, starting to act out, or even worse, hunger pukes? Comment below before I go into that. Does your dog do any of those things just before mealtime? So when I started asking questions, doing some research, and testing different ways and times of feeding my dogs, I learned really quickly that if you think about a dog and what they actually are, which is a dog, very closely related to a wolf. No wolf in the wild eats breakfast, lunch, and dinner same time every day all throughout the year. They eat once a day, if that, and sometimes they don't even eat for a full day. And I'm not sitting here saying that my dogs are wolves. What I am saying is I had a little bit of a problem, which I think if you're watching this video, you do too. Your dog may be begging you for meals or acting out if you miss a meal. The way that I combated all of those things, and this is so simple, and I wish more people talked about this, is I started feeding my dogs once a day. I hear this all the time. I could never imagine feeding my dog only once a day. They'd be so angry at me. But guess whose fault that is if that's your reality? That's your fault. And I mean that respectfully because I was right there with you. Dogs and animals in general were very rarely ever meant to be following a super structured schedule in anything they do. Randomness and variety is the spice of life. When you feed your dog at the exact same time every single day, not only does the dog mentally start expecting that food, and that's why they might be acting out and begging for it and demanding it, but their body biologically starts expecting and preparing for that meal. And what I mean by that is, if you usually feed your dog at 8 a.m., at about 7:30, 7:45, most dogs, if they've been on a really strict routine, their stomach and gastric acid is gonna start building up in preparation to digest the food that you are about to feed them. And if you do this every single day for 2, 3, 15, 10 years of their life, what's gonna happen is the body becomes smart. Our body and our dog's bodies are adaptive, they're intelligent, and they're set up to help us survive and thrive. And so if the body is used to getting a meal every single day at 8 a.m., then you better believe just before 8 a.m., the body's gonna start preparing itself to digest the food that it's expecting to be prepared. And what it does, and the way that it does that, again, is building up gastric acids, also known as bile. That's when you see a lot of dogs start vomiting either throughout the day or just before mealtime, because the gastric acid starts building up in preparation to digest the proteins and the fats and the macro and micronutrients of the food that you're expecting and preparing to feed the dog. And of course, that bile and that acid in an empty stomach, because you haven't fed yet, causes discomfort and the body wants to rid of it. And that's when you get a hunger puke. And the same goes for your dog's behavior. If you have a dog like me who is extremely food motivated, you might find that your dog starts tearing things up or just acting out in general when it comes to mealtime, or like I said before, demanding you for mealtime. And that can be frustrating because we all live a life and sometimes things change. Sometimes you sleep in, sometimes you're sick and you can't feed them right away. And it's annoying, candidly. We love our dogs, don't get me wrong. I have a YouTube channel dedicated to my dogs, so I get it, I feel you. These are all the reasons that I decided to explore different and new ways of thinking when it comes to feeding. And that's when I started learning about the importance of just feeding once a day. In addition to that, not just feeding once a day, but changing up the time of day that I feed as well frequently. So it's not 8 a.m. every day. It's 8 a.m. one day. It's 6:30 p.m. another day. It's 2:15 p.m. another day. And keep it completely random. And the way that this helps your dog, both mental health and physical health, is think about it. When your dog eats 2 or 3 times a day, especially on a dry food diet, the body's gonna have glucose spikes, or think of blood sugar. They're gonna have insulin spikes. Both of these things during the spike period can lead to inflammation in the body. And that actually applies to you as well, but that's not what this video is about. And so when you're having your dog go through these peaks and valleys that can lead to inflammation multiple times throughout the day, that, in my opinion, is not ideal for most dogs. And I wanted to eliminate that with both my boys through feeding only once a day and feeding a low carb diet. If you guys want a video on what type of food I recommend that I like and prefer for most dogs, click the video up here. I have a whole series on that and link down below. And when you feed only once a day, you're giving the dog's GI tract and their digestive system a chance to rest. This is something that I just don't see a lot of content out there on. I know, buddy, but it is so incredibly valuable because the dog's digestive system and their GI tract has a direct correlation with their immunity. And I'm not trying to do biology and anatomy and physiology 101 with you guys. I'm just trying to break this down in common sense. When you are feeding your dog meals multiple times a day, the GI tract never really gets a chance to fully rest. But if you feed your dog once a day, that means there's a bigger gap of time between feedings. And that means that, like I said, the GI tract can rest, but it also means that the body in between feedings, because there's a longer time frame, it's not being asked to digest and absorb nutrients from large amounts of food. And that means that it gets a chance to really metabolize the fat that you fed the dog, the proteins and the carbs, especially if you have a dog who is always seeming to be hungry and you feel like you can never satiate them. Feeding them only once a day can help. And that's because there's a longer time between each feeding, obviously, because you're only feeding once a day. And so the body becomes better at metabolizing the fat, the protein, the nutrients in the food, and getting all of the nutrients out of it and excreting all of the toxins and things that the body doesn't need. And the reason that works is because you're giving the body more time to digest the food. You're not asking the body to absorb and digest large amounts of nutrients every 3, 4, 5, or 6 hours. A dog's body, they're scavengers. They were never biologically meant, in my opinion, they were never biologically meant to be eating on rigid schedules like a child human. They were meant to eat when they could find food and scavenge food. And so the way that I feed my dogs, I believe, is more in tune with the way that they were naturally supposed to eat. So you may be watching and going, okay, this all sounds good, feeding once a day, but I don't know how to do this, and what about what time to feed them? I'm feeling overwhelmed. So just wait a second, I'll give you a schedule and kind of tell you how to slowly transition to this if you decide you want to do this in just a minute. But let's first talk about timing. If the dog is never mentally and even naturally able to predict when and what time feeding is going to be every day, the body's never going to have a chance to start building up the bile and the gastric acid in the stomach because the dog's never going to be expecting food. And you better bet that over time, once you've switched to once a day feeding at random times, the dog is going to be less likely to beg and start acting out and demanding dinner time or breakfast or lunch because they don't know when they're going to eat. And I know you may be thinking, Rachel, that doesn't seem right. I wouldn't want to eat once a day. Why would my dog want to eat once a day? Well, I actually also believe that humans could do better and could be healthier. Many of us, not all, could be better if we actually ate less frequently. Our bodies, we don't need to be consuming food every 2, 3, 4 hours. Now, I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because I feel like I want to eat all the time because I love food. But what I'm trying to say is, you may think it's cruel to feed your dog once a day, and maybe it's not the best for your dog. But for me, the reason why I feel really good about it is I don't have dogs demanding for food. I don't have hunger pukes anymore like I had before, which imagine that. That's really uncomfortable for dogs. They're confident that they know they're gonna get fed. It's random, and they get more delighted throughout the day when they get fed versus just expecting it and demanding it. And it's just created a stronger bond and relationship between my dogs and myself. And for me personally, I talked about this in the beginning about you including you and that you're important. Some days I might get up extra early, or some days I might work later in the day, and their feeding times when I used to have them on a schedule would vary, and it always caused such a ruckus in the house. The dogs would be angry, be frustrated. I would then get frustrated because they were acting out and jumping all over me, and I'm trying to get worked. So now we're in a position, and we're in a time of our life, that makes me sound old, where they know they're gonna get fed. I feed them the right amount, so they're still getting the proper amount of calories in. All right, you're all in, you're ready to go, you wanna try this out, but you don't really know where to start or how. So I'm gonna go into the how you can start transitioning into this type of feeding schedule, and then I have 2 bonus tips, one about proper hydration and one about healthy eating habits, so definitely stay tuned for that. But first, let's talk about how. If you're currently feeding 3 times a day, then maybe go down to 2 times a day. Same amount and quantity of food. I'm not saying to feed them less, and do this gradually. Maybe what's best for your dog is, instead of feeding them 3 or 4 times a day, you only feed them 2. So they still get large chunks of time between each meal, but you don't feel like you're starving your dog. Then we can talk about timing, and that, just keep it random. Don't over stress it. Like, let's say you normally feed them breakfast right before you walk out the door for work or for school at 8 a.m. Okay, maybe some days when you first wake up, you feed them. Puppies, very important in my opinion, and from what I've researched and what I've learned, to feed them multiple times a day. Everything that I can dig my teeth into has said that at minimum 3 times a day for puppies. And when I say puppies, I mean dogs under 12 to 18 months of age. I know, you're like, what? I thought a puppy was 8 weeks. No, dogs are continuing to grow, most of them at least, at rapid rates, up to 12 to 18 months, some of them even 24 months old. Puppies grow at extremely fast rates, so you wanna make sure that you're supplying proper nutrients frequently enough so that they grow healthy and properly. And bonus tips, here we go, boom, make sure that at feeding times, you're not just putting the bowl down there. Use feeding time as training times. Work with them, work on sits, work on downs, and if you need training things you can do during mealtime, click the video up here and watch the videos down below. I have a ton of ideas for you. The second thing is, I wanna ask you guys, and I want you to comment this down below, how frequently are you washing your dog's food bowl and water bowl? No matter what you're feeding your dog, I recommend that you rinse out and clean your dog's food bowl and water bowl at least every other day. Many people will say every single day. Some people will say I never wash their bowls. Here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing. Whether you feed kibble, raw food, whatever it is, there's bacteria in the food. And if you let that fester for a while and it creates a little bit of a slime around the bowl, that's not going to be healthy for any living being. Now for this bonus tip, and this is more for those of you who are feeding a raw, fresh food diet, one way you can help your dog feel satisfied longer is feeding them a lower carb, higher fat diet. If you feed them a diet that's more rich in healthy raw fats, healthy raw proteins, the dog is gonna be satiated longer, just like you or I. All right guys, I want you to comment below, how many times do you feed your dog a day? And is it at the same time every day? And what happens, I want you to comment, what happens if you try not to feed your dog at the same time? If you don't know, I want you to try and then come back on this video and tell me. I'm really curious of what you say. And I also want to encourage you guys to jump in on our Love Army mission. Basically, all that means is on this video and every video you watch of mine, I want you to go into the comment section. I want you to find two people you've never seen in the comment section before, and I want you to leave something encouraging, positive, and or kind to them. Even if they're asking a question and you don't know the answer to the question, no big deal. You can still leave them a heart emoji or say, hey, have a great day. That little bit of kindness could literally make somebody's day go from a frown to a smile. And I know it sounds cheesy, but it's true. If you love our mission to save all the damn dogs, click that subscribe button and click that damn like button. If you guys have any further questions, comment them down below or connect with me on Instagram or Facebook. Just search my name at Rachel and Fasaro. We get intimate, we get deep, we get raw on those channels. So I thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a Finnegan beautiful day. Bye.